Anybody, anywhere,
It's time to take command.
The Cardiac Commanders are the Clutch Commanders!
With former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen.
This pass caught by Paulsen, the tight end.
And from 106.7 The Fan, Grant Paulsen.
Take command looking ahead to Thursday Night Football and a collision between the Packers and the Commanders from Lambeau Field on the road, week 2. You're 10 days into the season and a chance to be 2-0 with a division win, a second conference win, and a really quality victory against one of the best teams in the NFC, possibly a golden opportunity for Washington. I bring in Logan Paulsen. I'm Grant Paulsen. Take command available wherever you get your audio. So download, subscribe, rate, review the podcast. And of course, you can watch us on YouTube on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. But Logan, these guys got to be licking their lips here because you've already birdied a hole against the Giants. A really, really good op to be 2-0 with a mini bye, sitting around watching football this weekend, going into a home game against the Raiders where you'll be favored.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I'm not a big fan of Thursday night games. It really messed my process up as a player. I just felt like I was so disrupted. I never felt like I was fully prepared. But if you can capitalize on this, like ride the emotion of the moment, you're playing on 9/11, lots of cool things going on here, primetime game. If you can ride the emotion of this, come in and play Commanders football and get a win heading into the bye, man, it's really nice to kind of have something to break up the monotony of the early season. So I think I definitely think while this week is really hard for the guys, next week they can enjoy it because they'll have a little lighter workload and be able to kind of, get their mind off football for a little bit.
Looking at the Packers defense, they had a tremendous first game against a really good Detroit Lions offense. Now, Ben Johnson, who's now the head coach of the Bears, no longer calling plays, so a bit of a transitional period for Detroit. But Jared Goff, those elite weapons that we've gotten to know, Jahmyr Gibbs was shut down. They did a really good job against the run. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, a lot of them were held in check by the Packers. I want to start to look at Washington's offense through the lens of defending the Green Bay front with Washington's offensive front. Micah Parsons, 29 snaps, 22 of them he lined up on the offense's right side near Josh Connerly. At the left edge, he ended up with his first sack in those 29 reps, showed and brought a lot of speed. They've got Rashawn Gary on the other side. They've got very, very talented secondary rushing depth with Lucas Van Ness. If you're the Commanders, how do you start your game plan looking at what is a very, very competent front?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I think the front and the linebackers are all Edgerrin Cooper and Walker. I don't remember his first name from Georgia.
Quay Walker, former first-round pick.
Quay Walker are tremendous athletes, and they play with tremendous physicality. You mentioned Lucas Van Ness. He was a really interesting piece to watch in the defense because sometimes he's playing a 6 technique, sometimes he's playing a stand-up 9, sometimes he's playing a 3 technique, sometimes he's playing a 4-eye, and he just gives them so much flexibility in the front. It makes it hard. The diversity makes it hard to prep for. And when you watch the Detroit, their philosophy has always been at its core to be a smash mouth football team. But one of the things I always appreciated about Ben Johnson is he said, we are an exotic smash mouth football team. So even though they were going to run downhill, they were going to run outside zone, they always had a little bit of window dressing on it. And I felt like in this game, they were so aggressive at kind of asserting their toughness that it really hampered them. So what I would say, if I'm Cliff, I'm going to think about not getting into 13 personnel where they can kind of get these big, first round picks on the field altogether and let them kind of jam up the run, be physical, get hands on blocks, and just say like our guys are better than your guys. I want to see how they handle if we spread them out a little bit. Do they take Quay Walker off the field? Edgerrin Cooper doesn't usually play stand up in the nickel because they don't trust him in coverage all the way. So can we get him off the field? Can we spread him out? And then what do they do when we give them a lot of stuff to look at? They played a little bit of man. They played a little bit cover 3. The other thing they did a great job of in this game was disguising their coverages. And I can't wait to watch this hurry up against that. Because one of the things watching the hurry up is it's faster this year, I think, after watching the first game. It's faster. So you're not going to be able to disguise your coverages as long. You're not going to be able to get that really complicated defensive play look in. So I think Cliff should lean into that big time. Let's spread them out a little bit and see how they match our personnel. And then can we create creases just based on formation and alignment? I think it's a really that would be my first kind of building block principle. And again, like, so when you're building a game plan, that's the first foundational piece, broad, kind of what philosophy do I want to engage in? And then you kind of get into the specifics. Oh, I like this run. I like this motion. I like this shift.
How much easier is it to go tempo, hurry up, no huddle at home in an environment like this past Sunday, as opposed to Thursday night in Lambeau where it's going to be super loud and raucous? And then when they're able to do that, like, there's so many words and the verbiage is so crazy. How do they go so quick in this offense and still get everybody lined up the way they need to?
So that's a two-part question. I'll try to answer both parts. So first off, going hurry up on the road, I think is a brilliant idea, because so much of what you're doing is based on hand signals and gestures and minimal communication. One of the thing, and so when you think about fans, when you're in the huddle, they're quiet. When they're out of the huddle, they're loud. And there's a rhythm to the way the crowd cheers, especially on the road in a place like Lambeau where the crowd's really, really smart. Like, they understand huddle quiet, break the huddle loud. When the quarterback's trying to communicate, they get louder. Here, it's a constant communication. There's no indicator for the crowd to be like, whoa, it's all pretty even. It's like, when do I start cheering? And then Jaden's doing his hand signals, doing all this stuff. And so there's no need. The thing that the noise makes it hard is communication, but you already do a ton of nonverbal stuff. So I think it's brilliant. There were times where we'd go into early in my career where we'd go into road games and we'd start in like a 2-minute or Apache version of our offense where it was more hand signal based, because we wanted the crowd out of it, especially on the first ride, take the emotion out of it. So I think that's part of it. To your second part, the second part of your question there is, I have no idea. Like, I mean, think about how much diversity we saw in this last game. We saw 11 personnel. We saw 12 personnel. We saw play action pass. We saw keepers. We saw zone read. We saw different backfield motion sets. And to communicate that non-verbally seems so overwhelming to me. I think it really speaks to how smart how smart Cliff is and how smart this offensive staff is. And there were times where you're trying to build a portion of your offense that's minimal communication. So you have one word, code word. You can do some of that. I just don't know how much of that one word stuff you can do. How much of you know what I'm saying? Like, it seems like they have so much diversity in the hurry up. So that if someone was given a seminar on that, I definitely want to check it out, because I think that's fascinating.
Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen, take command. We are getting you ready for the Commanders and the Packers. Micah Parsons, before we move on, you watched the tape of that first Green Bay game against Detroit. Some of the numbers here. When he was on the field, not known as a run stuffer, but -2 rushing yards allowed on 7 plays with him. Without him, 15 runs for 48 yards. They actually got more effective and stout when he was on the field, for what that's worth. Small sample size. As a pass rusher, 3 pressures, 17 rushes, had a pressure that led to an interception, also a sack after he beat a double team. You got 4 hands on you, and you somehow end up getting to the quarterback with backside pursuit.
I mean, to me, this was the coup de grace of the offseason. Laramie Tunsil was number 1 for a long time, and then all of a sudden this happens, and you say, what was going on with the Cowboys? Why'd they get him out of the building? Because to me, he's the second most dominant defensive player in the NFL outside of Myles Garrett. And I'm not saying that lightly, because I understand there's Chris Jones. I understand there's TJ Watt. I think this guy's better. I think the freakish get off, the power, the just absolute twitch this man possesses is so unique. He's 26 years old. So when they brought him in, this is something you totally expect from him. You totally expect him to be able to line up over multiple positions, rush the passer at a high level. I thought they'd kind of move him around, try to hide him, get him on the fish. He rushed on Penei Sewell a lot. That's their best offensive lineman, and that was an absolute war. So fun to watch. But you see how good he is. You see how absolutely dominant he is in these situations. And I think, I'm happy he's out of the division, but this is a tough week 2 matchup. as far as pass rushers go, and just defensive
Interestingly,
plays.
he was only on the field for one play in the first quarter, and then he ended up with 28-9, and mostly late in the game. It was kind of a Von Miller-ish plan. He did not practice a lot. He did the McLaurin offseason plan and training camp plan. So maybe part of that was football shape, or I'm not really sure. Terry, for the record, was not on any kind of a pitch count. He played 79% of snaps, which is 1% lower than last year's. It was basically the exact same thing that he averaged. But on Micah, so when I say that he was over top of the right tackle, 22 of 29, there's obviously games and things they're running. But it sounds like you think maybe you move him to the interior, try to get him some looks against like Coleman, Biotish, Allegretti in the middle of the formation there.
I just remember last year, and it's like seared into my brain in like a negative way, how good he is rushing on interior guys, especially in third and long situations when there's no concern about the run. And this isn't just last year. This is every year he's been in the league. And this is what happens. Like, look at Myles Garrett. He had his most productive year a couple of years ago when they switched defensive coordinators. And it wasn't just like Myles Garrett line up on the right side. It's like Myles Garrett line up over the left guard, over the center. And those guys, those interior guys just aren't used to dealing with that level of twitch and explosion. Like even Abdul Carter had a couple rushes over Coleman, had a rush over the center where you're like, holy cow. Like they're just, it's a different ball of wax. And as a defensive coordinator, you can space the front in a way where you can ensure one-on-ones on those interior players. And so the tackles are used to it. They're used to kind of the rhythm, the timing of dealing with a player like that. But when you take a player of his ilk and his ability, it's the same thing that we do with Dorrance Armstrong here in Washington and putting him on the interior. It's just the timing, the movement skills are different. It's kind of the same thing you would do with Chris Jones. Sometimes they move him out to end. Those tackles aren't used to that big body out there. So I think if you want to maximize what he does, you definitely want to get him lined up over the interior. So that being said, if I'm the Commanders, I'm thinking about how do we handle him on the perimeter, chip, slide help. I'm definitely thinking about that kind of stuff. If he's on the interior, how do we get the slide working towards him? Maybe it's a 6-man slide, something big where we just need to get him kind of caught up in the wash and eliminate what he does well from an athletic standpoint. So it'll be really interesting to watch. But again, that's kind of what Green Bay did, I thought, so well against amongst many things, and we'll talk about that more in a second. But they did so well against Detroit was presenting different rush looks, presenting different spacing, and absolutely disguising the heck out of their different coverage structures. So again, this is where I go back to Cliff, right? The hurry up, the wide splits, the different formations are going to help, I think, eliminate some of that ability to disguise and some of that ability to hide the pressures that they ended up running.
Yeah, we'll drill down on the disguises, especially on third and medium depth, needing 5 to 8 or so or deeper. But one more on the run game, because Washington's coming off running for 230, the number 2 yards per play on the ground in the NFL this past week. The Packers allowed negative 12 rushing yards before contact, minus 0.6 yards before contact per carry this year, which, you look at Dan Campbell's entire tenure in Detroit, it was the second worst game they've had running the football and getting hit in the backfield. In fact, Packers hit the Lions ball carriers behind the line of scrimmage on 16 of 22 attempts. 73%, dude. Whoa.
You definitely felt that watching the film. You definitely felt kind of a wave like pushing through, like, when you're watching the all-22 from the end zone or from the sideline copy and you just see one side kind of in a rugby scrum push the other side back real quick. Like that's what it felt like. And
isn't that where Washington's misdirection or some of their, stuff where you've actually got to read as a defender just slows them down? You can't
think about it.
Yeah.
If you've got Devontae Wyatt, former first-round pick, Rashawn Gary, I think he's a second-round pick, Micah Parsons, first-round pick, Carl Brooks is a third-round pick, Lucas Van Ness is a first-round pick. They have a style of athlete on the interior. But if you're going to jump off the ball going vertically, like what's the run that was most prolific for us in the preseason? Wham. We'll wham the heck out of you, right? Oh, you're going to do that again? We'll trap you now. And we do run trap very well here in Washington. So I do think that the style of run that they're going to see is going to help with that. Also, I just think when you've got Jaden Daniels and you've got Deebo Samuels, you have to defend more grass. And that's what I'm saying is Detroit came out and said, we are physically tougher than you. We are Dan Campbell's our coach. Like this is what everyone was worried about when he became head coach. And what I mean by that is like that they're just going to try and be tougher than you all the time. The NFL, there's too many tough too many good athletes for that. Too many tough, smart athletes for that. You need to have some type of creative element to it. And I look at the run game that they implemented against the Commanders implemented against the Giants, and there's misdirection. There's multiple looks, multiple ball carriers, multiple positions. There's screens. There's things to get you off the spot that don't let you just trigger downhill. If I just let you see the back, trigger downhill, track the guard, make the tackle, you're going to look pretty good. And I felt like that was the thing with Detroit that really was frustrating in watching the film, is like, I felt like they just tried to like put the mouthpiece in, put the neck roll on, and beat you physically. And that's not who they've been over the last couple of years. The other element too is that they thrive on these explosive chunk play action plays down the field. And I will say, I thought Green Bay did a great job maintaining coverage structure and keeping everything in front, so those big plays never happen. But that also, I will say, jives with a good pass rush, where you see guys like Devontae Wyatt creating quick pressures, Micah Parsons with quick pressures, Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, kind of sleepy, really good players in terms of their ability to just absolutely compress a pocket from the perimeter. So they do present a lot of challenges, and I think it's all driven from that defensive front.
Xavier McKinney, one of the handsy players in that secondary, gets his hands on a lot of footballs, had a near double-digit interception season. So you mentioned the disguising of coverages. How do they avoid situations where they can confuse or disguise, now, other than the obvious, which is like, let's stay out of obvious passing, clearly, but it's going to happen. That's inevitable. So what can they do? What answers does Cliff have?
Well, if you're kind of going to like, what are your answers versus disguise coverages 101, tempo, great solution. Cadence, great solution. So, using different cadences, using motion with different cadences is a great solution. And the other thing is formationally, if I am in a wide split 3-by-1 and I'm disguising, let's say I'm disguising, I'm disguising cover 2, right? But I'm giving a quarter shell, and I've got 3 dudes to the far side of the field. That backside safety is not going to be able to hold that disguise very long, because there's a lot of action happening to the right side over here, and I need to make sure I can push this way. So those are some simple things, right? Also, like unique formations. So a good example of this would be like tight end nub. So you've got Zach Ertz by himself to the right. You've got 3 receivers to the left. And in that situation, do they leave a corner over on Zach Ertz's side? If they do leave a corner over there, it's probably a zone coverage, right? If they leave a nickel or a safety on Zach Ertz, then it's probably a man coverage. So using those different formations, using the hurry up to limit the ability to disguise, using cadence with motion to disguise, to help them undress their disguise, I think is going to be a huge deal. And then also, like, when they like knowing what they run, I think Detroit didn't have a lot of file on what Green Bay was going to run and what they were going to be and how they were going to disguise some of their stuff. Now you've got a game's worth of information. So you can be like, okay, look at this corner's body language. See how he's not actually in man coverage because his eyes are in the wrong spot. Those are the types of things now you can utilize as well.
Take command looking ahead to Thursday Night Football in Lambeau and the Green Bay Packers. Next, when Washington's defense is on the field. Peering across the line of scrimmage at Jordan Love in the Green Bay offense. What do we need to know? Logan's got our answers next on Take Command. Welcome back to Take Command with Logan Paulsen. I'm Grant Paulsen. We're going to take a deep dive into the Commanders' defense against the Green Bay offense this segment. But first, a pick segment brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. I look at the total in this Thursday Night Football game, 48.5 points, basically a projection of a 28-24 final in Green Bay's favor. I think it's going to play under that. I liked what I saw from Washington's defense. I think Green Bay wants to run the football and set up play action. I could see this game opening up in the second half, but I still think the winner's probably in the low to mid 20s and the loser's in the high teens. So I think this game's going to play closer to 43, 44 points. I'll go under 48.5. What's the style of game you're expecting here, Logan?
Gosh, I think you hit the nail on the head there in terms of what the Green Bay Packers want to be on offense. They're going to present a lot of different stuff. They're going to shift, they're going to motion, they're going to use creative backfield kind of action. Think about like kind of a more downhill version of what the Miami Dolphins are doing, where they are kind of running like single wing or triple option elements to their offense in terms of how they kind of create eye candy in the backfield. But make no mistake, man, they want to run downhill after your butt. Like they want to get after it. And so I think like that's the thing is like, don't let the kind of the history of this organization, with Aaron Rodgers there fool you. Like they are going to do all this kind of window dressing, but they are coming downhill, duo, power, counter, outside zone. And like you said, they're kind of trying to farm yards in that situation to hit you over the top. And I think like that's one of the things that's really interesting is there's not like a big name stud on the offensive line, but they're all pretty good. There's not a big name stud wide receiver, but they're all pretty good, and they all kind of can create separation and win. So everyone sees Jordan Love's numbers, and they say, "Oh, he's distributing the ball to everybody," but that's how the offense is built, And I think like that is a good thing because there's no like, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing, but there's also a lot of places where the ball can go and hurt you.
That was the pick segment brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. I felt like rewatching Packers Lions. Jordan Love put the ball in harm's way a good bit.
That's like his deal, though.
It is. It is 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, but it's so misleading. Look at TWPs, the turnover-worthy plays. There were a couple that were negated too on
TWPs.
Penalties.
Look at you with the acronym, bud. Love it.
I mean, that's not me. That's what the stat is, right? But yeah, I mean, but he does. He puts the ball up for grabs. If you can corral footballs in the air, he's going to give you a chance to pick off a pass or two. He doesn't really have, a chip yet that kind of allows him to turn things down. It doesn't seem like.
Yeah, and everyone's like, "Oh man, Green Bay looks so good." And when I went and watched the L22, I was like, "They look okay." I felt like they were in a kind of a slobber knocker divisional round, and they were able to capitalize on turnovers by the Detroit Lions. I think 2 red zone turnovers. Right? Think about that. If Detroit's able to capitalize on both those plays, like the outcome of this game looks very, very different. It's tied ball game potentially, right? They kick 2 field goals. They turn the ball over twice, like just not very efficient in the red zone. So part of that is because of how they play their defensive structure with all the disguises and different looks and their ability to stop the run on first down. But yeah, in terms of what they want to be offensively, it's like kind of grind it out, pound it out, and then we're going to hit that explosive play. And they were able to hit enough. I'm actually trying to figure out what their explosive play percentage was in this game because it didn't feel like a lot, but they were able to find enough to turn those into points.
One of Green Bay's most physical players is their running back, Josh Jacobs. He was actually held to 8 yards on his first 6 carries in the first half by the Lions, and then he averaged closer to 4 yards per carry in the second half. It's interesting. I mean, this is a guy that led the NFL in goal line carries last year, over the last year and change, 34-plus carries. I mean, nobody used more in those short yardage and one situations. They get him behind some pullers with big patient stuff. You mentioned like the fear, maybe I think you said with Dan Quinn was it's just going to be like mano a mano, hat on a hat stuff. Green Bay loves that. Like they want to have push it matches.
Dan Campbell, yeah.
Or Dan Campbell, rather, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what it ended up being, and I was surprised too, like because they do a little bit of window dressing on offense in terms of trying to create some creative angles in the run game, but I think Josh Jacobs is slept on, man. You definitely sleep on Josh Jacobs in terms of production.
No, you hibernate. I read you a bedtime story. You lay down in bed, and then you put your head on your pillow and you say,
"It's hard. I can't
read me a story,
dude.
About
you
Josh
can't read.
Jacobs.
You dreamt that up, man. That's how sleepy you are." Josh Jacobs.
Honestly, I do sleep a little bit because he's not my cup of tea. I like a Jahmyr Gibbs explosive, open field, exotic. He is just a battering ram. John Gruden, when he thinks about Josh Jacobs, he starts talking like this, man. He gets all fired up, brother. That's Josh Jacobs there, man.
No, absolutely. And I think that's the thing is like I think the league sleeps on him just in general because he is a talented guy in terms of vision. Talk about maximizing dirty runs, different than like Bill Merritt, but like shoulder square, powerful legs, has enough juice to kind of hurt you when he gets in the open field. And then the dude catches the ball pretty well, And so as a weapon in the offense, he's probably the most potent and the most featured. He reminds me a little bit of how San Francisco uses Christian McCaffrey. And again, not the same exact thing in terms of like, I'm going to play receiver, I'm going to line up in the slot, but they try to get him some receptions. They try to get him some downhill touches. They try to get him some creative touches in space. And I think he's like kind of the only true bell cow running back left in the NFL outside of the guys that we're familiar with, your Derrick Henrys, your Saquon Barkleys. And so when I see this guy, I think this is going to be a great test for the Washington defensive front. We just talked about how physical and tough they were versus the Giants. Like, again, there's no stud on the offensive line, but they play really well together. They're good athletes. They got good feel in pass pro. It's like pretty much they took the same guy and just cloned him 5 times, and they're all 6'4". They're all 310, 315, good movers. And it's a dangerous group when they kind of combine all that stuff together. They're good at the tight end position, Green Bay. So it's a different kind of challenge, different kind of teeth. And then I think the playmaker at quarterback, I'm glad you brought up the turnover-worthy plays, but he is not afraid to sling that thing into tight windows, a little Favrean in terms of his approach.
Yeah, there's no doubt. By the way, they spread it around. Like, it's very schemed up. It's very much around the line of scrimmage. Like, they threw the ball to 10 different guys against the Lions, and everyone, it was basically like 1 or 2 catches. The only guy that had 3 catches was Jaden Reed, who incidentally, let's get a thought on Jaden Reed, by the way, because he's got some Debo to him. Like, he was the only guy other than Debo to align in 4 different locations offensively last year, 5% of the time or more. He had the second highest motion rate among wide receivers in all of football last season, minimum of 150 snaps as well. So, like, he's a guy, I don't know how you really account for where he's going to be and how. It gives you some of the same Debo preparation issues.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, they've got some really unique playmakers. Tucker Kraft, is that his name? The tight end from South Dakota. Yeah, like it's funny. Like, when I was watching, I was like, he kind of reminds me of George Kittle. You mentioned Reed, kind of reminds you of Debo. Obviously, they're different, right? I just mentioned Brandon Jacobs, how there's kind of this McCaffrey usage to his game. Different players, but kind of similar usage. You can see LaFleur, how he draws inspiration from other places and kind of puts his own creative spin on it. And I think he's one of the better play callers in the NFL. So you're right. It is not this conventional playmaking setup in terms of here's the stud, let's handle those guys. They all have a certain playmaking ability, like Romeo Doubs, really nice route runner. Who's the receiver that they have, the tall guy who's like this home run threat down the field. Like, they've got different body types, they've got different styles, and they've got weapons at different places that can hurt you. They got great depth at the tight end spot. Musgrave is another guy from Oregon State who has some dynamic receiving ability. So I look at this offense and I say, like, in some ways, this is a tougher challenge for Joe Witt Jr. in terms of game planning, because depending on the week, depending on the situation, depending on the day, depending on the hour, depending on the minute of the game, actually, like, we could be featuring someone different and motioning and shifting somebody into a position to make a play. And then all of a sudden the player having man coverage on that guy is now the focal point of the Green Bay offense. And so I think that's the thing that's so interesting about this offense compared to other offenses in the NFL.
They drafted Matthew Golden, the first round wide receiver, who made his debut this past weekend, kind of split time. You mentioned the size of Wicks, the speed of Watson when he's healthy, adds something to the room. Romeo Doubs has had huge performances in the postseason. So, yeah, they got a lot of options. It's a lot of weapons. Not anybody that really, it's more quantity than quality in a sense. But, over the season, you'd imagine someone's going to emerge. By the way, I did just get audio. I was trying to get this sent to me, and I want to play this for you. So this is apparently, someone's telling me this is audio of Logan Paulsen, and I didn't even know we had this. So here, let's listen to this. Josh Jacobs.
The file's mislabeled, bro. That's you. That was you. It said Paulsen, right? On the file?
It said Paulsen sleeping on Jacobs. It's got to be you, right? Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I just wake up in the middle of the night with like chips and dip on my chest talking about Josh Jacobs. Tucker Kraft, by the way, you got his name. Yes. Good job. 5th most yards after the catch at the tight end position last year, 481. 2nd most yards over expected tight end, plus 132 last year. He's a guy that Logan really sleeps on. All right, lastly, before we get out of here, who eats? I want to know. Matchup, you've watched the tape. You've seen kind of how they play. I need the commander on offense, the commander on defense. Logan Paulsen, pick the click here. Who eats?
So it's tough. It's tough to say who's going to eat offensively. I'm going to say Zach Ertz eats on offense, because I do think that they are, like, McKinney is the safety. I think he's a better zone player. And I think Zach Ertz, anytime you're going to get a guy like, and again, great ball production, great football player. anytime you get one-on-one matchups with Zach Ertz with a safety like that, I think he's going to find a way to win. Defensively, gosh, that's a tough one, man. There's so much versatility going on there. The guy that I want to eat, that I think has the ability to eat, is Javon Kinlaw. Again, this offensive line is good, very talented, very athletic, but I want to see his power and his disruption in this group, and like let them see a body type that they're not used to seeing. Again, the defensive tackles they have are tremendously athletic, but they're all under 310 pounds. They're not big guys. This is a pitch they're not used to seeing. Let's see if they can hit it.
Logan, Thursday Night Football under the lights. I know
It's
as a
exciting,
player,
man.
You said you didn't love it, but as a fan, this is as good as it gets. Commanders are considered one of the best teams in the NFC. Chance for a big-time statement for Washington. Next time you hear from us will be after the game with a live breakdown Thursday night. Logan will be traveling with the team, so I will have a special guest with me as you are in a very classy 30,000 feet eating and drinking steak and some caviar and hopefully some champagne to celebrate the win. But we'll be breaking it down, and then on the other side, Logan will have a film review. Remember, 3 eps a week wherever you get your audio. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, and you can watch us on YouTube on the 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. All right, Logan, safe travels to Green Bay, man. Enjoy the game.
Thanks, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Take command in the books. Did you freeze? I thought I was frozen.
I thought you were frozen.
I thought I froze. Maybe I did. I couldn't hear anything. I thought I froze again, and I didn't want to say anything in case I wasn't.
I thought you were rapping.
This has been a shabingus with this video. This has been an utter shabingus.